Man, Pegasus Knights are so freaking cool. I don't know what it is about them, but ever since, even like before Total War Warhammer even existed, and I was just a young lad going into hobby stores looking at Warhammer box sets and seeing these freaking Grail dudes riding Pegasus, just amazing. Absolutely spectacular. And definitely one of my favorite units in Total War Warhammer as well. Super fun to use, extremely mobile, fast, a little bit of a glass cannon, but can definitely do very well in certain circumstances. Today, we're going to see them in the hands of a Rider of Rohan, Cavalry Master himself. Here, he's got the Enchantress also leading the way, some questing knights, including the Companions of Cornell, and some Spearmen-at-Arms here, Blessed Field Trebuchets, protected by another questing knight there in the back here, another Spearman there, up against the Bretonnia. Yes, it's the Greenskins doing Bretonnia at them, basically. We've got Boar Boys and Boar Boy Biggins, plenty of AP cavalry, supported by now anti-large goblins, some pump wagon flappers for a little bit of extra mass and AP, a Grand the Paunch, Night Goblin Shaman, or Boar Boys. So, definitely got our work cut out for them, man. They're going to have to be careful about where and when they deploy to not get overwhelmed by this absolute mass of boars. But the intrepid, courageous, fearless, perhaps foolish even, questing knights are just going to straight up charge on in. And with this initial sort of wave of boars not getting their charge, they also get isolated here. Pegasus Knights are able to use their mobility to kind of combine. That's a huge amount of resources worth of cavalry here. Itchy Nuisance going to be cast on them a little bit late, but also something from the Enchantress, perhaps. Maybe not. Maybe just a little heal there, but one questing knight starting to take some damage, but we do see already countercharging from multiple units of boars here. We've got Grom in here as well, using his lucky banner, use himself up, but that Itchy Nuisance will help somewhat. Of course, the other one here, what is it? I don't know if he actually brought it. Gork will fix it, yeah. Reducing charge bonus and charge speed is actually pretty important against Bretonnia. Gork will fix it is definitely one I would have in the chamber. You take Lord Little Wah in this matchup, absolutely. But Wah, speaking of which, being popped now, given that huge map-wide power spike to all units. But the Pegasus Knights do manage to disentangle themselves. Haven't always been able to do that effectively, but here they certainly are. Get sort of a clean, disengaged lane, able to get up and around and sort of hammer and anvil in a very mobile fashion with the questing knights once more, isolating and tearing away more of these boar boys. Yeah, again, the boar boys not being able to form up. We've got one unit kind of going out after the field trebuchets. Another one, they do successfully take out the field trebuchets, which granted, tactically, a good thing to do. Value-wise, also pretty cost-effective, honestly. One-to-one trade just the regular boar boys into field trebuchets, but that does isolate them, right, and keep them away from supporting units and, more importantly, away from other boars. So the Pegasus Knights, once again, just take off into the sky, swoop over. Oh, we see a nice comet there in the distance, landing on some infantry as the Enchantress does damage herself. And that being said, you wouldn't expect, yeah, questing knights, once they get kind of in the sustained grind with the goblins plus the boar boys in particular, it's not a best trade for them. You know, Spearmen-at-Arms plus the questing knights is a comparable sort of situation, but they are probably more expensive overall. Yeah, definitely more expensive overall, so it can be tricky, but let's see how they can do. Yeah, questing knights continuing to just kind of die slowly in many cases, acting as more or less mobile infantry here, which is definitely best use case for them, right? Nice little countercharge here on these boar boys. One thing I think I've always loved about Bretonnia is the liveries, right? The fact that these different knights, they have their different colorations from the different like provinces and houses or whatever. It's super, super cool. Makes the armies very colorful. And to be honest, in our own real history, people don't realize, but medieval armies were actually quite colorful. And yeah, I just love to see that reflected in a game like this. Of course, it is absolutely a fantasy universe, but while being popped, speaking of which, Lucky Banner, great one is here, so huge power spike for all these units that are sort of focused around Grom. Let's see, Goblin Spears with something like 56 melee attack. Yeah, the Goblins, they do juice quite well with those stacking buffs. They can trade very cost effectively. You can see some Knights being torn down here. But there's enough knights, and they have enough mobility to try and swing out and clean up what's left. Again, I think from a win condition perspective, thing that I've talked a lot about on this channel, thinking from Rider of Rohan's perspective, absolutely the win condition still is to win the mobility battle, basically. And to do that, he's got to finish off a few more units here. The missile cavalry is almost out of ammunition. They don't really do that much damage anyway, so you kind of can basically ignore them here. Yeah, just come in here, finish the last of these boar boys. If you can get Grom isolated, absolutely take him out. The Fanchantress also gets a pretty good engagement here in a duel against the Night Goblin Shaman, who is one of the worst single entities in the game when it comes to combat stats. He does have poison, but it's really the only thing going for him. So Fanchantress, especially with a charge bonus up on Silveron, can absolutely take him down, no problem. And yeah, we see our little Earthblood there trying to sustain, of course. Fanchantress has been healing this pocket of cavalry the whole time, but once again, they find the one unit they need to prioritize. Hit that boar boy, take them out, take some losses in the process, but key is if they can take out enough of these Greenskins mobility units while retaining enough power, try and finish off what's left in the late game. And now one important factor as well, the Fanchantress is still quite healthy. Even if she has to fight like a horde of goblins at the end, she still has this Mists of the Lady, right? She's got some damage resistance. She did use, well, she's got one more Chalice of Potions charge, actually, so saving that right now for potential late game blob against some infantry. So she's got some tools here to try and deal with a big horde of goblins. So again, from a win condition perspective, you really just got to take out the enemy mobility, then everything else will fall into place. Balance of power slightly in Bretonnia's favor. I think at one point it was maybe slipped onto the Green Tide's side, but as for right now, it's Conquest battle. Pegasus Knights once again charge the ground. This time it's a brutal massacre of these Wolf Riders. Yeah, Wolf Riders, they're not absolutely not cut out for that engagement. No surprises, they get absolutely massacred. At least the Boar Boys are able to get in there. They get a nice little buff here as well. Goblin Spears get at least a little bit of time in contact, but Fanchantress is going to drop her Comet. Oh no, the one unlucky Pegasus Knight is going to get hit by it, probably. Yep. Okay, well, maybe he wasn't so pure after all. Yeah, that will absolutely break these two support units, though, and then all of a sudden, Grom finds himself isolated and likely to get surrounded here. A little bit of a janky pathing, but nonetheless, Pegasus Knights are still able to pretty much get us around on him with the Fanchantress as well. So, absolutely nightmarish scenario for him. Gonna pop that Lucky Banner for some damage resistance. The other supporting units gonna swing in, but smartly, Rider of Rohan had one of his Pegasus Knights in the air at that time. Gonna charge in the side here, break the counter-charging units. Yeah, the Snotling Pump Wagons, although great unit overall, and I really like the pick here in this matchup, actually. I'm not gonna hold up too well here. Just Spider Riders to support them. Yeah, those mangy Marauders still with some ammo. They actually have a little bit of armor piercing, even though their overall DPS is very low. Dumping in some shots at range, but basically at this point everything's gonna shatter, leaving Grom all by himself. Favor of the Fae should come up soon. I haven't really been tracking that, but it looks like he not even bring Favor of the Fae. Anyway, even still, just the Enchantress herself gets pretty good damage, or attack rolls rather, against Grom. Pretty favorable rolls, and he himself once again gets surrounded. That should be game in the beautiful sunset in the Badlands. That's a fun one for sure. Big thanks to Rider Ron for sending that one in. That was a wild game. Absolutely wild build, but yeah, at the end of the day, the Pegasus Knights all pay for themselves. Tactically, they do everything they need to. Likewise, the Questing Knights, although they didn't quite pay for themselves in terms of raw value, again, tactically, having that sort of mobile infantry role, able to reposition and shore up where they need to, form kind of mobile hammer and anvils, Very, very strong situation for sure. Even some of the spearmen. Wow, 400 value on a peasant spear is not bad at all. 21,000 damage dealt, 169. Very nice kills. 2150 damage gold value for the Fanchantress, so she definitely puts in her work as well. Just clearing through the chaff here. Speaking of which, talk about juicing those goblins. Man, 800 value, 800 value, a 500 value, 500 value, almost 600 basically. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, that is Greenskins buffs 101, buffing up their lowest tier unit to be able to take on elites of other factions. Very fun stuff. The rest of the build, I mean, I guess one regular boy, yeah, orc boy does get in that buff train as well. Vors have a much tougher time. Only one of them, I think, yeah, is going to pay for themselves here, which is pretty tough. I mean, definitely invested very heavily in that portion of his army. Needed more out of it. But credit to Ryder Brohan really using the mobility of the Pegasus, keeping them all together. It's exactly what you want to do in many situations, is to just keep them all together, use them as a strike force to just kind of find those isolated units that they can take out very quickly, swoop in, smash them hard, get out before the enemy can respond really in a meaningful way. And it's definitely a strategy I found that works very well in certain situations. Again, oftentimes you'll find that, you know, against certain types of builds, you might have a hard time finding those clean engagements, or they might not have units that the Pegasus Knights can take out quickly, in which case you risk getting bogged down in longer engagements, and they definitely will struggle a lot more. But here, where you can strike those lower leadership Greenskins cavalry very quickly, smash them, get out of there. Absolutely ideal situation for the Pegasus Knights to perform very well. So love to see it. Thank you so much, Ryder Brohan, for sending that one in. Thank you for being here watching. And yeah, we'll see you next time.